and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am delighted to welcome you all to the 6th International Procurement and Supply Chain Conference 2021, presented by Blue Ocean Conferences.
This is the biggest gathering I've seen since the beginning of the pandemic. I congratulate you on the selection of the theme of this conference: One World, One Supply Chain, Evolution of Connected Global Supply Chain Community. As I said, it goes very well with also the theme of the Expo.
What is the impact of an agile workforce within the supply chain framework? How are people and processes connected to prepare for and prosper through supply chain disruptions? To help moderate this panel, I'm pleased to welcome back to the stage International Education Strategy and Business Development Lead at CILT, Mr. Jon Harris. Although I don't think he's in the room. Oh, you're over there. I was looking for you here. Mr. Jon Harris, if you can come up on stage. And our panelists, very honoured to have our very own CEO of Blue Ocean Academy, Dr. Sathya Menon. Welcoming back to the stage, Mr. Douglas Kent, Executive Vice President, Strategy and Alliance at Association for Supply Chain Management. Hamid Al Ali, Innovation Engineer at Dubai Electricity and Water Authority. And Mr. Rahul Bharti, Vice President and Head of HR for International Business at Z Entertainment Enterprises Limited. Ladies and gentlemen, your final panel of the day.
Welcome to our team. Welcome to Sathya, Hamid, Douglas and Rahul. Just picking up on what we said before coffee about the importance of skills. We're talking in this final panel session about the importance of an agile workforce. And of course, we can't do that without equipping our people. From a Chartered Institute perspective, we've done quite a bit of research with over 120 training providers around the world to see how they have coped with COVID-19. And over 80% of them managed to carry on functioning and in fact grew their markets by going A, online, B, developing bite-sized approach to learning, and C, reinventing themselves in terms of the business solutions that they were marketing. There's a common theme here of skills and equipping workforces to be truly versatile. Just two quick examples. In Central Asia, the Chartered Institute were subsidized with overseas funding to develop a business support program. And this took a number of professionals from HR, from soft skills sector, from the infrastructure sector, and from logistics, and trained them how to be efficient mentors. One of the challenges, as we all know, with consultancy is we have to get really good at embedding skills in an organization, so when consultancy extracts itself, the organization is all for the better for having that experience. So in Central Asia, where consultancy concepts like that are sometimes not that familiar, we needed to build trust, build support, and train these technical experts to be really good coaches and mentors, to kind of give away their knowledge and support effectively. So over 75 organizations, small businesses, were supported during the time of COVID, and now will continue. And in addition, we have a similar mentoring program for women, supporting entrepreneurs and women managers based in South Africa. So we, as an institute, are really passionate about that. And I guess all of you on the panel share that passion as well, don't you? So let's just turn to the first question here. So how could we measure the optimization of people's performance across our supply chain networks? Is this a return on investment, simple math calculation? Can we measure the return or value that we replace on certification? So I'm asking that first of all over to Douglas.
Well, of course you are, John. Thanks. So I think it's very interesting because I think when we take a look at the return on investment, we could look at it from two perspectives. The first perspective is what's the return on investment from the individual, right? So if I'm going to go get extra education, training, et cetera, what's that going to mean to me? And we actually measure that. So at ASCM, we do a salary and career survey every year. And this year produced some really interesting results. So individuals who attained a certification, on average, against individuals who didn't have a certification, had a 27% increase in salary.
Wow.
Which is amazing. 21% of those who received a certification got a promotion within the first year of receiving the certification. 88% said they were happy or extremely happy with their profession. And in addition to that, those newcomers who got a certification, from the time that they were searching for a job to the time they received the job was less than 3 months. Okay. So that's indicative of the ROI for the individual. When you turn that around to the corporation, this is where I think the ROI is something we really need to do more in terms of research on to say, if I invest in my employee, what then is the return to the organization?
Yeah, there's definitely a value add, isn't there, when you invest in people. Can I just clarify, we talk about certification. Was that a qualification or was that any form of professional development improvement that was filling a skills gap? What do you mean by certification?
In this particular instance, it was a certification of any sort, particularly the ones that we offer at ASCM. So it was truly a certification, demonstrating that certification in combination with education has a strong additional value component to it.
Sorry.
Okay, so I'm going to turn to Sathya on this one. So you're a training provider, obviously, you know, we've heard about all the fantastic work Blue Ocean's doing. You're close to organizations and what those customers want. What's your view on what Douglas has just said? Do you agree with him?
Yeah, organizations today, they want to become agile. Agile is all about responsiveness. But in supply chain industry, people who are traditionally working, they are here by chance and not by choice. So earlier when we started our careers, there was no qualification in supply chain. So people, I think somebody who is above 35, certification plays a very important role because it's basically skill development. It's not an academic qualification where we learn theory or right from the basics. We are already a professional.
Doesn't matter.
We learn, we try to bridge that gap between the skill and the knowledge.
Yeah. Absolutely. And if we go back to the South African example I explained earlier, actually that's what's happening there. These women are talented, they are industry experts, but they've never had that skill validated, and that's why using diplomas and applied learning is so important. Thanks very much. I'm going to move on to the next question because this agile theme is so broad. Let's say hi to Rahul. So Rahul, let's talk about HR and the HR dimension. So what's the key connection between effective human resources management and efficient supply chain management? Where's the marriage, Rahul, in that?
I think in supply chain management, there are 4 key parts. Basically, there's people, there's process, there's policy, and there's technology. And HR comes in the aspect of people and the policies. So obviously, hiring the right set of people, upskilling them, retaining them is key and critical to success of the business. Apart from that, obviously, when new policies are coming in and you are cascading them to the company, to the organization, though that's where the HR interface comes in as far as supply chain is concerned.
Okay, let me follow up. So just a scenario. What happens if you are a CEO of an organization and because of the impacts of COVID or other trade patterns, you're asking for increased agility from your staff? You're asking them to do different things in different ways really quickly. But on the other hand, you're not sure about whether they feel valued as staff. How do you deal with that tension?
So I think the challenge is basically to create a culture, basically in organizations which value contributions. So how do you create a high trust, high enablement, high engaged organization? Because you can upskill people, you can retrain people, but unless you are going to trust, and this is becoming more and more in the new work environment because of the pandemic and the technological shift, the jobs are evaporating. The World Economic Forum says that about 43% jobs losses will be there in the next 5 years. And there will be a 50% people will require upskilling and training in next 5 years. So the jobs are changing. There's already there was robots and automation that was coming in, but these changes are making the changes much more rapid. So it's important that we are able to work now in a asynchronous. So you have to have a culture which supports asynchronous work. Earlier, all work was happening at the same time, and even in supply chain, I know in industries it might be different, but it's now required that people will work at their pace, at their time, and this was not there classically in organizations. So how do you support an asynchronous way of operating? And that's where people will be able to contribute much more. And are you able to give them the autonomy that's required to do the work that they want? So are they self-directed instead of they being together and being doing? So each person basically wants autonomy, mastery, and a purpose. These are the three intrinsic motivators to anyone. And as long as you're providing them, and if the people are there who are already trained and they are upskilled, I'm sure they are able to contribute. So how do you create the culture of this high trust environment, which is one of the most important things? Yeah. How do you trust people to work remotely while they are not there in front of you? How do you provide support anywhere on any device? And that's a challenge for the HR people, that how do you provide support to people in any forum, in any place? The third thing another thing which will come is, how do you create an inclusive workplace? Because people are working in different locations. There was always an advantage in case people were working in office compared to people who were working remotely, because they had more knowledge and more access to information. But those things are what is creating the new demography.
That's great. Thanks, Rahul. No, a really comprehensive answer there, folks. And I think what you're reflecting there is we can't underestimate the importance of culture. We can't underestimate the importance of trust, integrity, and belief in our workforce. I'm going to come straight over to Douglas now and ask a sort of bigger question, which is, if our supply chain strategies serve to deliver our overall objectives, how can we be sure that an agile workforce is developed that's going to consistently deliver? We've got, managers or strategic people having the big picture, but actually it's only going to be successful if it happens on the ground. What do you say to that, Douglas?
Well, I think we're hitting on a very, very common theme. So if you really listen to the words that His Excellency shared with us earlier, he described the old supply chain as one that was really driven around incremental improvement. That's no longer the case. We're here to make transformation happen, not incremental improvement, which means that we need to have an HR system that actually delivers that type of transformational experience. And as, let's just call ourselves more mature leaders, it means we have to think differently about who it is that we attract into the organization. If we're attracting people who are like us, we're not going to be necessarily transformative. I'm sure we're going to come to that a little bit later as well. So I think it's very important that we think about, as David was describing earlier, the creative people, people who really challenge us to think differently. I mean, at the end of the day, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Let's use them appropriately.
Okay. Well, this is a time for me to bring in Hamid. Hamid, I'm going to follow on here, which is about competency and younger professionals, okay? So you as a skilled younger professional in the job that you do, what's your view around graduates and people coming into the workforce now? Are they oven ready, or is there something that the industry should be doing to kind of accelerate their readiness? What would you think?
Well, when it comes to my generation, it's all about them being very flexible and adaptable to the changes. If you think about it, our generation have faced most changes than any generation in the past as we continue to grow and do our own set of education. So we have seen the changes that happen throughout the infrastructure, and especially throughout the world with the pandemic, and before the pandemic through the technologies that we are having access every day. So even if you look at the kids today, you can see that they have access to their iPads and all the information that is out there, and they're constantly uploading new information every day through their mind, being adaptable and flexible to the changes. So I'm sure they're always ready, as long as there is coaching, mentorship. I believe that any worker would be ready, especially a fresh graduate.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. You mentioned those golden words, coaching and mentoring. I'm absolutely passionate and always have been throughout my career about the value of mentoring. It's not an add-on, it's not an optional thing, ladies and gentlemen, it's an absolute essential. In fact, we are seeing people joining professional bodies just because of the mentoring that the young professional can receive at this particular point in time. So I think we'd all agree the skills are critical, but we've got to try and think about the data, people, and the process picture together. So I'm going to stay with Hamid and ask you a question. So you're an engineer, you're innovative, you're creative, okay? But how do you see those three things working together? That's the data, the people, and the processes.
Well, data is now in every part that we live in. It's in everything, from beginning of the supply chain, you could say, until the very end, there's data. And from that data, you're able to analyze and actually know exactly how you can best serve the consumer at hand and perhaps even change the way that we work. And I believe that connecting data with people and processes, we can not only just incrementally improve, as Douglas has mentioned, but also disrupt the way that we do our own work at hand.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the C word, the customer now. And we've talked a lot about the people and about the skilling, but the end customer is really critical in all of this. So how could we use HR practices, and this could be at the top level or at a very practical level, to make sure that the expectation of the customer is fulfilled? You know, you can have strategy about we're a world-beating organization, our supply chains are super resilient, and that's drummed into us through corporate messaging, but actually the success is the end customer and how they're made to feel. What do you think needs to happen, Rahul, to make that flow work, and what can the HR profession do to solve that?
I think the HR profession needs to work on the performance side of the business, how to align the goals where the strategic goals of delivering to the customer is aligned to the people. So the KPIs and the KRAs need to be completely aligned and they need to be synchronized. For example, new goals are coming in, like you mentioned earlier, about sustainability goals going forward. So there are companies which are even putting sustainability goals in KPIs of people so that those goals are delivered over a period of time. So how do you make systems as resilient as possible, and how do you create an aligned workforce as much as possible, especially in a remote work scenario? Because this remote work scenario is almost like a general purpose technology. Now they are saying that last year was just an aberration. Even economies will change. So now next 3 years, and if you can see even in UAE, for example, there are so many changes in labor laws in the last 1 year itself, and that the transformation is so rapid compared. So we are not going back. People want to go back to the work, but they don't want to go back to the old workplace. They want to go back to the transformed workplace.
Yeah. They want to go back, yeah, it's interesting, they want to go back to something transformed. There's a little bit of a tension there. People love what's familiar, but they like the new and the fresh and the new way of living, particularly in the UK, and I guess here people have got more contact time with their families. They realize that they're valuing time as a premium as opposed to purely salary or income. Douglas, have you got a view on that?
Yeah, it's like Back to the Future, right, John?
Yeah.
So I think, first of all, most of us would have an aspiration, or even, maybe even purposefully stated in your vision or your mission, to say that customer centricity is important, right? The difficulty that we have is that we have this as an aspiration, but operationalizing that into what we do every day is very difficult.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is just take a look at your own operations and think about whether or not you're really supply driven or you're demand driven, right? So is it that I think I have this creative idea and I create a product or a service that I think might have some marketability, that there's a market appetite for that? Or are you really taking to heart the voice of the customer and driving that into your own innovation? And I think that will really tell you, if you put hand on heart and really assess it in that way, whether that aspiration of customer centricity has been operationalized into your business model.
No, excellent. Really good answer there. Thank you. let's move on. We're into our last 10 minutes, and we are going to give you some time to ask some questions. So we're down to our last 2 questions. Now, a lot of the discussion this afternoon has reflected on what's an ideal situation. Okay, we all know how we want to develop talent. We all know how we'd love to be super agile. But obviously, COVID-19 is one of the macro impacts, but there are lots of others going on around the world. So, Dr. Menon, the key question for you, why is it imperative to have an agile workforce for supply chain management when the marketplace is volatile?
What is agile? Agile is about responsiveness to the market situation. Why we need agile workforce? To cater to the volatility of the market. Now, if you see, the entire supply chain is like a flock of birds. Now, when you see a flock of birds flying, when one bird changes the direction, the entire flock changes the direction. So, the supply chains of the future, we have a lot of data points. So, if there is one variance in any of the data, the ecosystem, it should be able to sense that there is a variability in one of the processes, there is a variability in one of the systems we set, there is a variability in the data which we have. So we need to give a lot of attention to that. Now, many times it gets missed because we are working on a big data, there is so much of data flow happening. But this supply chains of the future should be able to sense that and change course immediately. So not only COVID-19, possibly in future, we might find some other volatility. So the people who are working, the workforce, they should be trained well enough so that they are able to sense this and react to the data immediately and respond to the market very fast. Like what Douglas said, the data and the processes should be always customer-centric, and we should respond to the customer. Like we have to, like Six Sigma, we need to look at the voice of customer. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm going to stay with your bird analogy, Dr. Menon. I love that. Because birds sense danger, don't they? So when the wind changes or the weather changes, they all kind of immediately change the altitude or lead their friends away from danger. Question to anyone else that wants to take it. Well, how can we be like the birds and prepare ourselves? How can we see these things coming? Obviously, COVID we couldn't, but some of the economic stuff, you could argue you could. So anyone want to take that with a quick answer?
Well, just to reflect on Dr. Menon's comments, so I think culture is driven by KPIs, right? And we have the wrong set of measures. We as organizations tend to actually celebrate the responding to a disruption rather than the sensing and mitigation efforts that would precede it. So simply said, we reward the firefighting instead of the fire prevention. So if we want to change the culture, we have to change the KPI.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Douglas. Right, we're on to our final question, so there will be time for a couple of people to ask from the audience. So our last question is to Hamid, our youngest member of the panel. Okay. I just want to see it through your eyes, Hamid, and be very honest with this question. Are we skilling and supporting young people into the profession in the right way? Okay, you said, you're intelligent, capable, you learn and absorb very, very quickly. So is the toolbox actually what you're looking for? And are we giving the right training and the right skill development to fuel your passion? What would you say, either personally or on behalf of other young professionals?
Well, I can say this, if I can give a message to the leaders of today, is that when the young people come to your organization, whether it's any organization, they have the passion, they have the motivation to do their best to serve the vision of this organization. So when they're right there, you have to hold them that they continue on this passion and this motivation, because they're eager to do whatever they can to assure that they meet the goals of that organization. So make sure you give them that sense of purpose. Sense of purpose that they're not only working from the bottom, but also that they can actually see what's going out there in the top, with the top management team. And I've been blessed within DIWA to be around the top management team, to be around vice president, executive vice presidents, and even himself, the CEO, His Excellency Saeed Al-Tayr. And through them, I was able to see what they're seeing. So as a leader of your organization, it is not to only recruit young people and make them do the changes, but rather to create them as the future leaders of tomorrow. That's the purpose of any leader within any organization. And I believe, as we mentioned, with the right coaching and the right mentorship and the right exposure within the work environment, all make them into the better people that we need for the future.
Yeah, tomorrow's leaders are here today, and with that thought, I'm going to pause and think we've got about 3 minutes left. If our timekeeper can confirm, we've got chance for 1 or 2 questions from the floor. What could you do in terms of accelerating agility or accelerating the growth of young people's talent within your organizations? Anyone wish to make a comment at all?
First of all, I really thank you. You guys, you have done a wonderful panel discussion. The straight questions to either Rahul or Dr. Menon. See, you guys are in training actually, and then there is a machine and human intervention, integration is increasing. So where do you see training going in supply chain in coming year or coming days? Are you looking at basically training robots or training humans? Thank you.
Good question. Do you want to take that one?
I can take some of it.
Menon, yeah.
I think the World Economic Forum says that about 50% of the jobs will be automated and 50% will be humans. So the jobs might change. There will be obviously be humans to train. We have to train them. But what's happening, at least in all industries, is that the type of training is changing. So there's a lot of VR, a lot of augmented reality training is coming in, especially in case of compliance trainings. So people are using those technologies, and a lot of micro-learning is coming in, generally in the industry. So if you see the forgetting curve, which is one of the concepts, that in one classroom for a long period, people tend to forget. And then you do a micro-learning, the retention is much better. So a lot of companies are doing a micro-learning. In fact, the amount of online learning has gone up by 9x since the COVID started, by people. And employers are investing about 5x times on online learning compared to pre-COVID. So definitely people want to reskill. You need to pick up the right partners and the right people who can give this training to you. Because what's going to happen is the time to reskill also is shrinking. So now the pace is so fast that you don't really have the time to finish all this. And the inequalities will also increase, because people who can reskill themselves and people who can't reskill themselves, there will be a lot more inequality which will come in. So it's important to reskill and upskill yourself, choose right partners, and invest in yourself.
Okay, I'm going to give final words.
I think I will add to what Rahul
Dr.
said.
Menon.
The question to Dr. Sudhir. See, this is a question which I keep on answering to everyone in all my training rooms. Will we be out of job? So the only answer to that is, if you don't upskill yourself, if you are not innovative, if you are not creative, if you don't change in times with the market, you will be out of job. But just because AI or RPA or other automation comes in, a human being is not going to stay hungry. Yeah? The same question, when computers were invented, it was becoming popular. People asked, okay, if computers take over the job, what will we do? But I'm sure it created a lot of business opportunities, and I think we progressed as human beings, as individuals, as professionals. I'm sure it is the same case with artificial intelligence and robotics as well.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to give the final word to Hamid, 10 seconds. As young professionals, is bite-sized learning what you want, or is it something else?
When it comes to this, I would say it's a hard question, but Something that you have to reflect on. Bite sizing would definitely say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And any place, any time, and any device.
Yeah, I think that's a challenge for us all. And in closing this panel, I'd say a big thank you to all of our participants. Get thinking about this, because the learning agenda is having to be agile in itself. Don't look backwards. The only way we can look forwards and listen to our customers, and listen to the youth of today and tomorrow. Thank you so much for your participation.
Wonderful panel. Thank you so much, John.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, John, very much. Thank you, panelists, as well. If I could please ask the Senior Manager for Finance at Blue Ocean Academy, Mr. Madhu Gopinath, and Senior Manager at Blue Ocean Academy, Ms. Nafisa Reshi, to go up on stage to give the token of appreciation. Thank you very much.